Welcome to Selling in the Age of AI.
Yeah, this is good stuff. So,
Must-listen podcast for sales professionals who lean into technology without leaning on it. Dive into the future of sales with your hosts, the dynamic and inspiring Frank Somma, renowned keynote speaker, best-selling author, seminar leader, and business coach. Get ready for game-changing insights and strategies that value technology but place humanity at the top of the sales pyramid.
Benvenuti a tutti. Welcome everyone to Selling in the Age of AI, where we talk with giants in the sales field to emphasize and remind you that while AI is a powerful tool for all of us to use, we have to be great at the one thing AI will never be great at, and that's human-to-human contact. My guest today is the spectacular Scott Einbinder. Scott is a motivational sales strategist for the real estate and mortgage banking industry. He spends his days doing large and small scale motivational presentations, as well as working in the Einbinder Listing Academy, which is a cutting edge and premier educational space to teach realtors how to acquire listings outside their sphere of influence. I have to tell you personally, I've had the privilege of sharing a stage with Scott and seeing him in front of groups of sales professionals. I have to tell you, he is awesome. You know, the first time I shared a stage with Scott, God was kind and smiled down on me and made sure I was scheduled to speak before him. And for the rest of my life, if I am ever invited to speak alongside of Scott, I will insist on going first. He's not a guy you want to follow. But I'm glad he's here. Hey, Scott. Thanks.
Hey, how are you? You're too kind, Frank. Thanks for the kind words. Thank you for the kind words.
Man, you knocked me out. Every time I've seen you, you knock me out. But the first time, I've seen a lot of speakers, and I am a professional speaker. I haven't seen energy like yours ever. Like you're just coming into.
Well, I always say I do this with no drugs. There is no drugs. So I always have to put that disclaimer out there. You know.
Yeah, you should definitely be tested. There's no.
Well,
oh,
it's
that's
easy.
great. So, tell us a little bit about the Academy. I don't think I'm familiar with.
So what the Einbinder Listing Academy, is really, in the real estate space, really just kind of reeling it back a little bit. The real estate industry and I both navigate in the real estate mortgage industry. It's always really been about the buyer, right? I mean, most real estate companies survive on buyer commission revenue. And it's always been about the buyer, the buyer, the buyer. And even though, if you speak to any realtor, listings is the gold, right? Everybody wants listings, but the skill and strategy to get a listing is different than the skill and strategy to get a buyer. So for years, I've always, been talking about the listing and how to do it and all this stuff. But a lot of my clients wanted something deeper. And so I created this Einbinder Listing Academy, which is really the only one in the country that really goes from A to Z in really how to acquire listings specifically outside one's sphere of influence. We focus on certain verticals, but it's not this conversation that's 30,000 feet above sea level. It's very, very granular. It's very, very specific. It gives very specific things, very specific strategies. And you leave it and agents leave it. There's really no guesswork as to what to do. You know what to do. There's very unique, the key thing has been unique, different strategies. There's 1.5 million realtors and roughly 1.49 million all do it the same way. So you have to have a different strategy, a different method, and I have very different, unique solutions. So that's what the Einbinder Listing Academy is. It's an in-office, generally class. It's live. It's done interactively. And it's spread out over about 15 hours of class time, and
wow,
that's what it is.
Wow, and those 1.5 million realtors, those are all in Homedale here, right?
They are all in specifically, they're right on Route 34, in between Main Street and I think the local deli, yes.
Yeah, one of the things that amazes me, and you've been in real estate forever, like how do people talk about that, differentiating yourself? You talked about the difficulty in finding listings within your sphere of influence, and then you're teaching outside of your sphere of influence. So give me a couple of tidbits on how one.
So first off, again, I would make the argument that there is no differentiation between most realtors. The differentiation is the personality. The agents say, well, they all do the same things: open houses, marketing, social media, syndication. but you don't get me. You don't get me. Me. It's all, me, and they sell the me
Right.
to the homeowner, or to the client. And so, having unique solutions and unique strategies is really where I've been built. So again, when you're talking to somebody who you're kind of half sold on the way in, but the homeowner still has to make a decision. They might be interviewing somebody else, maybe not. But when you go completely outside your sphere, when you go to, let's say, a for sale by owner or an expired listing, somebody you don't know, remember, they know a couple of realtors too. So you have to really stand out in a different way. So while they may have a relationship with somebody else or know them, you have to win on other attributes. And that's where I always that's my business, is showing sellers different way to get to a better net dollar. There's a lot of catchphrases in the real estate business. I get you top dollar, and I'll, sell your house for the most money, but they never tell you how. So what we do, and what I do, is I basically don't talk about top dollar. I talk about net dollar, right? And how do we get people higher net dollar? And we have very, very unique strategies to attain a higher net dollar. For example, I have a thing called a risk reduction protocol, which basically is doing things for the seller in advance. It's called doing things proactively as opposed to reactively, where you do things like inspections and searches and COs and things that are typically never done until after the transaction or after there's a contract, which ends up costing people money. It ends up costing the seller money. So it's a whole recalibration. So while I've given a very broad stroke, and there's a lot more to the risk reduction protocol, it's really short-circuiting the way transactions are done to give really sellers a better net dollar result, a better way of the transaction going, because it's not just time and money, it's very granular with negotiations and very specific. And so those are the kinds of things that I talk about with with my clients, teaching them how to deliver it to the seller. It's like, somebody would say, well, asking a home seller to do a home inspection up front, that's not a new concept. It's not. It's been around, although no one does it. Very few people do it. But a lot of them are afraid to ask. They don't know how to deliver it. They don't know how to say it. They're saying, well, how am I going to get the seller to write a check for $300-400? So we go into those things in a very, very different way to get sellers excited to want to do business with you, especially when they don't know you.
What's really interesting about that is you were started out by saying everyone is trying to differentiate themselves and say, well, you're buying me. You're not buying.
Yeah, no, they're not. The only way they're differentiating themselves is through who they are as a person. But in terms of services, in terms of what agents do, if we called right now 10 realtors and said, what would you do for me as a listing agent? We will hear virtually 10 exact services. They'll advertise, do open houses, they'll all those things are the same. They're all what I call core services. Mm-hmm. And so most agents are delivering the exact same core services. Most agents, and funny, when I ask them, I'll say, are you bringing value to your client?
Right.
And they'll all say, absolutely. And then I'll say, well, do you bring value add to your client? And they'll be like, absolutely. And I go, well, what's a value add? Give me an example of your value add. And they'll say things to me like, well, my value add is I'm honest, I'm reliable, I'm trustworthy. I'm like, that's value add? That's kind of value expect, don't you?
That's like I almost
don't you think people expect? And when you press realtors and bankers on what's their value add, you can't get an answer. They all talk about what you're supposed. It's like a restaurant. It's like a 3-star Michelin restaurant saying the reason we have 3 stars is when you sit down at our table, we give you a glass of water. Okay, it's expected. We give you a napkin and a sharp knife. Like, that is not value add. So the business I'm in, and the business my clients have succeeded in, is creating and articulating and delivering value added services and strategies that will make a difference, not only to net dollar, but to the transaction itself.
Yep, that's what winds it back to being differentiating oneself. So what you're doing is you're saying, everybody's out there saying, but you don't get me. What you're doing is helping them to define the me as true value added, tangible, not just tangible. Hey, right. Look at me, I'm great. I'm going to show up. I'm going to be on time. I'm going to
make the transaction smooth. Yeah, I'm going to be there with you every step of the way. Everyone's got these phrases every step of the way, smooth. these are just phrases. These are just
Exactly.
phrases.
You're offering something that's tangible,
Tangible.
substantial, I can sink my teeth into as a
Correct.
homeowner and say, yeah, I want to list with Scott because I know these 5 things that he just told me no one else said.
That's correct.
Yeah, that's really cool. What about qualifying, Scott? The biggest bogey for me in the real estate business, when I get up and talk to a group of realtors, I try to emphasize this idea of qualifying. I feel like, there's so many realtors out there and so few real prospects that if somebody says, hey, I'm a buyer, like, okay, great, I'll pick you up Saturday and show you 27 different
Yeah.
places. And that doesn't make sense to me. How do you teach people to only take serious contracts?
Well, I think that in the at least in the real estate and banking industry, your consumer is at all different levels of the staging process, right?
Right.
There are people who are just scratching the surface. There are people that have to close tomorrow. I mean, so it's really hard, in my view, to always know that. I mean, I think you have to build your business, and you have to have a certain amount of people that are all stages in the process.
Right.
And I think what happens, I think in the real estate and bank, especially in the real estate business, like there's a lot of realtors that if somebody's not ready to go right now, they cut loose and move on, like because they're not really nurturing. They don't know how to nurture they don't know how to nurture it, right? They want right now. So I think that's one thing. But the real estate business, one of the things that we try to share is how to assess motivation. And I think that's really important. And, a lot of salespeople, they don't do that. They don't really know how to assess motivation. They're kind of afraid to. And I think that if you assess the motivation correctly and you find really that somebody is early in the process, then you have to kind of manage your business from that perspective. And again, when people tell you their motivation, they don't know you either. So, knowing how to assess motivation is a skill. And you can't get the right answer of that motivation unless people feel confident in you. Some people may not want to tell you they're super ready to go because they don't want to, they don't want to get the full court press. So I think that qualifying a prospect is largely about knowing how to properly assess motivation. You have to project a level of comfort in that exchange early on with people for them to share with you honestly where they are in the process, and asking really good questions that will elicit the right answer of where their motivation level is. And I think that that's really so. I think that, to answer your question in a very long-winded way, I think again every prospect has a different timeline, and you have to decide. Now, you might only want to have a certain amount of people in the early timeline. So if, let's say, you have 30 people in your very early stages, well, then if you meet somebody and they're very early, and your business can't quality have quality and interaction with them, then you maybe pass on that and say, listen, while I would love to work with you, it seems like you're early on. Not throw the prospect away, but if you can't manage it correctly,
I think that's where
move
the
on.
tech, to me, that's where the tech comes in. Because if I'm selling anything successfully, real estate or banking or microphones, doesn't matter. What I want to do is, if you're very early in the process, I want to have a cadence that nurtures you so
Yes.
that I am the person when you are more mature in the process. So
And that can change too. I mean,
and that's
people
not
can tell you,
necessarily me, right? That's not me putting myself in your face. That's where I'm using the tech. That's where I have a drip campaign that's working, things like that.
yeah, well, I think that, and again, somebody might tell you, listen, we're not looking to buy something till the end of the year. Then all of a sudden the weekend rolls around and they find something. So it can change. And of course, so I think using technology to touch the client and touch people is important. But again, my view of the world is, and when you look at most salespeople, I mean, if let's say you have a realtor or a banker that has 200 people, 300 people in your wheelhouse, right? Which is a lot. And I'm going to tell you it's probably never more than that, right? But 300 is a ton.
Right.
With all the AI, again, my guidance has been, what are you doing physically in addition to technology to engage that? I mean, if you're a good salesperson, you can sit down on a Sunday or a Saturday or a day and you can knock out a lot of phone calls. And there's something different about that. I know as a consumer, when I get drip campaigns and I get, and I know it's funny with drip, I always say, I hate the word drip campaign because I don't know about you, but I don't like to be dripped on. I mean, but that aside, if I'm getting touched, electronically,
Hmm.
and then I get a physical phone call, and even if I let it go to voicemail and it's a person,
Hmm.
it's a different experience. And again, we've got some great tools. Like one of the things that I like to do with that 300 person wheelhouse is I advise my clients to do little video notes. Now we have these great technologies. You can rattle off 100 video notes in a couple of hours, very specific, and you boom send them. Now imagine, you get from me, you get a little video note on your phone. Hi Frank, Scott Einbinder, just wanted to touch base. We're coming into the spring. I hope you're going to enjoy it. And again, just want to, any questions, give me a buzz. Have a great day. That that little, even it's just different, right? It's just you don't get it. We don't get these things, But and I said your name, Frank. I mean, there's something different about it, and that's where I think there's blend between technology and human experience needs to get closer rather than further apart.
Yeah, and I think when you've got those 300 people, there needs to be a combination of several different ways you touch them because everyone receives information differently, and you want to show up and be present and be ready when they're there. But one of the things I wanted you to touch on, what you said before about people may not be willing to share certain information with you, and I had a guy on the podcast, Mike Reddington, who said, "Remember, all your clients have been Mirandized. They know that anything they say will be used against them later on in the sale." And I thought that was
Yeah, I like that.
yeah, it was a cute way of saying that people are reticent to give you too much information because it's not the relationship isn't there yet. So how do you break that barrier? How do you overcome that and get genuine information?
So the way I always the guidance I give is there's kind of like a little structure that I share that every interaction you have should follow the following format. The first thing you have to do with people is you have to establish rapport with them, build rapport. Most salespeople don't do it. They go right into the sale, right into the transaction. They don't even say hello, their name. They go boom. Oh, how are you? Great. We got this great product here. So rapport is a skill set and should take a couple of minutes. Doesn't need to take 10 minutes, but the first thing is rapport. Once you have rapport with somebody, which by the way, you can get rapport in a minute. If you have the skill, you get a little rapport. It's a minute or two investment, if that, and then you slide into trying to identify their need or want. So step two is the need or want. Now again, people have needs. We often get confused between the needs and wants, but a good salesperson knows how to, dissect the difference between the prospect's need or want. What made you call on that particular home? What are some of the non-negotiables, non-negotiables? What is your objective? Then you listen to those needs or wants and you lean into them. Then you slide into what I call injecting your value proposition. In a very quick and succinct way, you give somebody a reason why you're worth working with.
Okay.
And if you can't articulate that in 30 seconds or less,
Yeah.
that's a problem because they need to digest it quickly. So you deliver a very quick, a very good reason that hopefully has differentiation to it, your value proposition. And I call it your value added proposition. Don't tell them I'm going to be there with you every step of the way. I'm going to work hard for you. But maybe you share something to them. Listen, I've got some unique ways to net more money with some solutions that are very proactive. Or maybe you say something to that effect. Maybe you're a loan officer and you say, listen, one of the things that makes me different is I bring in not just mortgage rates, but I'm going to engage a conversation with a financial planner, with a tax advisor. We're going to come up with a whole solution to really, really figure out a way to make. So quickly, so then you get that. So then you move into the next phase, which is you overcome their objections. If you speak to people and they don't have an objection, if they don't throw up one red flag to you, you're probably failing. If the person's just going, you're in trouble. So if they say something to you, well, I don't need a tax advisor, or you say something to the seller says, well, I just want to make the most money. There has to be an objection. You have to push for the objection. Most agent sales don't want it. So then when they hit you with you have to overcome it, because it's in the overcoming of the objection where you're judged. How you handle it. Most people, when they get an objection, Salespeople, they collapse, they fall apart. They object to your price. They say something to you like, let's say, Frank, just as a role play.
Yeah, please.
What's your price? So, Frank, how much would your product be? Hit me with something. Just how much?
It's $79 a month.
Frank, are you out of your skull? Are you crazy? $79 a month? Are you out of your mind? Now, when a prospect says that in an aggressive way to most salespeople, they laugh, they collapse, they can't handle it. But you've got to be able to seamlessly handle objections. When someone throws it up, you got to be able to respond accordingly. Say, listen, I understand $79 might sound like that, but let me just kind of tell you quickly why. My competition is at $39, $49, $59, but here's our major differences and here's the benefit to you. Like, you got to be able to handle the objection. And then we go into the last phase, which is closing. Closing for the appointment, closing for the meeting, closing for the sale, closing for the introduction. So a close isn't always the sale. A close is the goal of what you're looking for. So I call it the steps. Establish rapport, identify needs or wants, inject value proposition, overcome objections, close. And again, the close isn't the sale. The close is maybe the close for the meeting, the close for a follow-up, the close for a future conversation. So every prospect that dealt with, there should be structure. Most salespeople have no structure. They just kind of float with it. I'll deal with it. Let me just see where the ball bounces. I hear you. And some very, 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 very seasoned people can do this, but most can't. And most people and a lot of people in my industries are not highly seasoned. You've got, 1.5 million realtors. There's probably 300, 400,000 that have been doing this for 100 years. And then you got a lot of new people. So this is kind of the kind of perspective I share.
You know what? I would suggest that the people that are really, really seasoned, that you say can go with the flow, their flow is your structure.
100%. Listen, I'm seasoned.
It's subconscious, but that's.
I'm overcooked, right? I'm too seasoned. I'm highly seasoned, overcooked, well done, over well done. But I do it. I do the same thing. When I engage in what I do, and when I have a new client or I'm speaking to a company, I go through the same basic structure. You know what I mean? And this is not about tricks and games. This is just about taking control, right? You need to have control in the conversation, and if the client or the prospect has control of you, you're probably not going to have success. And that's where people get frustrated, because they feel that I've answered all their questions. I've done everything they asked. If you're doing everything someone asks of you, you're not a salesperson.
Right.
What is the client doing that you've asked? You know what I'm saying? So who's really in control?
Right. And I think that structure, like which you have in your bones, you're doing it every time. And what was super interesting to me too, is at the end when you're saying you've got to close, I think that's the piece that most people leave off, is that there needs to be a next step established. What you're saying is a close, whether that is, so Scott, that's great. You're going to look at X, Y, and Z, and then I'm going to circle back with you, and we're going to meet next Saturday morning at 9 o'clock to go over that. Yes?
Yes.
Whatever it is that I'm closing for.
That's a close, right?
You're going to call me next Tuesday. You're going to meet with your banker, and then I'm going to come by. Whatever it is, I've got to establish that there's a next thing to do. Otherwise, I'm that salesperson that's calling up, going, hi, following up, hi, following up, hi, following up, hi, following up. I can't stand that. There's no... If you're calling somebody and using the F word, you're making a mistake. There is no follow-up.
And there's got to be a compelling reason to do so. If you give people compelling reasons, they'll want to. That's the other thing, is that you got to make somebody want to be followed up on. They want to have a conversation with you. You got to give them something that's tangible and worth it for them to want to stay in contact with you. And that's really where it comes down to. Like when people, I'll send you information. I mean, no one needs information. We got more information than we know what to do with. Don't send me information, but maybe let's have an agreement to have some activity together, whether that's getting on the phone with a financial planner, getting on the phone with a tax attorney, strategizing in ways in which to, work on your credit to get you a better interest rate over time. I mean, there's so many activities that you can calibrate with that, will go there. But again, it requires, a salesperson's mentality of consistency and, all that stuff.
Yeah, and of being a salesperson, before we began the podcast, you were talking about the emotional component, right? You've got to meet new people as a salesperson. You're in a networking environment. You're at the local pub. You're at ShopRite. You're at a big meeting somewhere that representative of your industry, or even when you've been introduced or it's a call. And talk to me about how to manage those emotions and how to
So
meet
yeah, so let's so that you have to fight that. So let's go back to our early childhood development.
Okay.
One of the first things that our parents teach us is don't talk to strangers.
Right.
Now here we are, Scott and Frank talking to people about talking to strangers. It goes against our programming as people.
Right.
And it's, by the way, it's normal to not go up to strangers. I mean, that's a normal brain. To be successful, you have to be a little abnormal, right? And talking to strangers goes against your DNA programming. It goes against it. So the first thing you have to do is acknowledge that. Acknowledge that talking to strangers, for most people, not for me, I mean, I like talking to strangers, but most people don't like talking to strangers. So you have to accept that. And then you say, okay, well, if I don't like talking to strangers, how do I not get comfortable talking to strangers, but get comfortable with the uncomfortable, right? You got to get comfortable with the uncomfortable. So, again, there's lots of theories and there's a lot of things, go run a mile, do 10 hookups. Frank, I only have one solution. You just got to do it. Again, now you have to have good things to say. You need to have good scripting in your head. You can't just walk up to hi and just see where it lands. But again, in the world I navigate in with for sale by owners and expireds and homeowners, there are specific things that these people might need or want.
Okay.
So you ask the question, if I could provide you with X, you remember, you meet somebody, you establish a little rapport. But if you go into a stranger's conversation, believing in your head that you have something of value, you'll be a lot more comfortable in asking. Like, let me ask you a question, Frank. And this is like a terrible analogy, but I don't know any better way to put it. Let's say you were really, really uneasy talking to strangers. You were like super scared. But let's just say you, Frank, had the cure to cancer.
Mm.
You could cure cancer. You had a little vial, you drink it, you're cured. And every time they drank it, you get $1,000. Would you be uncomfortable talking to strangers?
No.
No, because you have something that will save a life. Sounds crazy. But if you believe you have something that's unbelievably good for people, you'll talk to anybody. That's the way you have to think about your business. Like realtors, you ask a realtor, well, what do you do? I sell homes. Like you gotta, or a banker, if you in your head believe you've got great ideas, great solutions, great stuff that's really, really good, that's where it starts. And you're going to be a lot more comfortable because the reaction you're going to get on the other side, in many cases, it's not about the people that throw you off their property or tell you to go pound salt or hang up on you. It's the ones that say yes. And you only need a few people to say yes to feel good about what you do. Remember, sales, I always say sales is the business of no, it's called no management. The managing of no. Every salesperson gets 8 no's to 2. I mean, I don't even know. I mean, you walk into the Apple store, 10 people walk in, 3 people walk out with a computer, 7 don't. Like, that's the business. And if you get comfortable with the management of no and understand what it means and actually feel good with a no, like I say, you got to get to the point as a salesperson where you get rejected, you go like this. You're like, ooh, that felt good. Like, that good. Like, because it means so much. When you get a no, what does it mean? It means you tried. You're a winner. You're not a loser. You believe in yourself. I mean, there's so many good things in the no, but we don't look at it because we didn't get the sale. So you have to develop this concept of managing the no. Managing, I don't like to say rejection because it's really not rejection because who are they? They're not they don't know you to reject you. It's the absorption of the word no and how do I digest it? And I was lucky. I was able to digest the word no at a very young age.
Right.
So I never, even though I was a sore loser. I almost got thrown out of summer camp because I was a sore loser. I hate to lose. It's a true story. I mean, they called up my parents. They said, "Listen, your son, you're gonna have to go pick him up because not only when he strikes out does he flip out, when his teammates strike out, he flips out." Like I was psychotic with winning, and I still am. But I was lucky, and I say lucky, that I learned that, and I'm still a sore loser. When I lose, Frank, I wanna punch a wall, but for about a half a second.
Mm-hmm.
And I recover quick. So I understand what the strikeout means. I understand what the no means, and I'm impervious to it. It doesn't even. I actually feel good when I get a no because I tried. Because all good things. So if you can get there, then it's easy. And we have to teach that. We have to reinforce that.
Yeah.
Most broker, owner, manager, leaders, they never work with their salespeople on digesting no. They're always trying to teach them how to convert a lead.
Scott, I relate to that, and I think that you have to be highly competitive to be successful in selling. So that instinct that was in you that almost got you thrown out of camp.
Yeah, almost, yeah. Not thrown out, but close.
It's a good part of your DNA. But what I tell people about the no is a little bit of a twist on that. And I believe, in my bones, you cannot hire a better speaker to bring into your sales team, their annual meeting. You cannot hire a better sales coach, a better presenter in a seminar to teach people how to sell than me. They don't exist. I believe that in my heart. People say that's hubris. I don't care what you think.
No, if you don't listen, if you don't believe it,
right?
If you don't believe it, how are they going to believe it?
No, and what that does for me, though, it allows me that when someone says no, my process is I feel bad for them. They're going to wind up with a lesser product. What a shame. And then I come back and check myself and say, what did I miss that they didn't realize how much better off they would have been with me? Yeah, and I go back to my process.
And I got a twist on that too.
Please.
Like when I get a no, and I listen, my attitude in life is when I win a big deal or I win in a selling situation, it's all me. It's all me. When I lose, it's all me. So whenever I lose a situation, my twist is, it's not what they didn't see, it's what I didn't convey, or maybe I missed. I have a situation, I was, articulating to a corporate opportunity, and had several meetings, and I didn't land it. I didn't get it, and even though, it would be easy for me to kind of, look at them but I started thinking about it. And again, I always looked to improve. I said, you know what? In thinking about it, I think I might have read some of the players wrong. You know what I mean? I think in hindsight, which we always want to unpack, I read the situation incorrectly. I think that's the reason why it didn't land. So I think that, again, my twist on the no is, it's very easy sometimes. And I see, I go on LinkedIn sometimes, and I see on social media, and I see these salespeople who get angry at consumers because, they didn't appreciate me, or, the people aren't loyal. Nobody owes you loyalty. Like, at least that's my attitude. I don't think anybody owes me anything. Like, I either win it or I lose it. It's all me.
And well, we're saying the same thing. What did I miss that you aren't able to realize what a great solution I am?
Totally.
It's my fault. Right. I didn't get you to realize that. And I think the other part of that we were talking about talking to strangers is, if I believe I'm the best real estate person, if I believe I'm the best mortgage person in the world, and that if anybody gets another mortgage person, another real estate person, they're going to have a lesser experience, don't I then owe it to the world to make sure I introduce myself? Isn't it? Aren't I doing a
Yeah.
service? It's not for me. If I don't introduce myself to you, you're going to wind up with a crappy experience.
I'm with you. Absolutely. You should be proud to share with the world. And the one thing about being the best, whether it's the best speaker, the best loan officer, the best realtor, the one thing too is you really have to be it. You can't just say it, right? You gotta like be it. And one of the things that I love doing, and I still do it, is I love to get feedback and criticism. And a lot of salespeople, they don't really like to be critiqued. And I think it's another big flaw in our whole, at least the training apparatus in the banking and the real estate space is there's very little criticism. Like no one really sits there and picks them apart, and they think they're wonderful and they think they're great, but they can't even deliver a listing presentation, or they can't even, a loan officer can't even overcome a rate objection. Like, you can think you're wonderful, but pop holes in your delivery. Let others who you respect get around you, deliver your pitch, and sit back and listen to what the critiques are.
Yeah.
And you don't have to accept them or not, but it's important. And one of the things I did early in my career, Frank, is when I wasn't formally trained as a speaker, and I kind of didn't know it, but I knew early on I was not formally trained, and I don't even know if people are formally trained. I really didn't know much about it. So what I did is I hired a company to record me in my delivery. Like they would go around and they would record my presentations, and then they would critique it. And the first couple of times it was tough to take. And by the way, I would watch myself in my delivery, and I would be like, "Oh my! I can't believe I just said like."
I know.
And I had these guys really pick apart
Oh my.
what I did, and I had a lot of things early on I didn't realize. So I thought it was very healthy, and I was so grateful to the person who gave me the advice to do that. They were kind of like a mentor to me, and they go, "Listen, Scott, you sound, you're funny, you're good, but I don't even know if it's even like." So it was great, and I also I'm great. I have the ability to listen to that, and I want to be critiqued. I love that. I really do. I mean, you get to a point where I want somebody to
Sure.
find the thing, find my dull point, find the thing where I don't have the edge. I want to hear it, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, I think that's super. One of the great aspects of being a good speaker, a good salesperson, is you've got to get feedback and you have to look for it. You've got to reach out for it. You've got to, whether it's hiring a coach or like you did, hiring somebody to film you and critique you, watching your own film back. Those are all super important things. Practice is an important aspect. I wanted to ask you about handling objections because that's a really delicate thing for people. Not to be argumentative, but still handle the objection.
Sure.
Talk to me a little bit about what goes in that process.
So again, the one thing in the real estate and banking arena, which is my arena, is we know with almost 100% certainty what those objections are going to be in advance. Everybody's got the same objections, whether it's commission or price recommendation or term. We all know them. And what's so funny is that when salespeople in my arena get the objection, it's like they're hearing it for the first time. They're like, "What?" So that's the one thing, which is insane. But I always say objections are the opportunity to show people what you're really all about. How do you handle yourself? Grace under pressure, right?
Right.
So knowing the fact that we know many of what these objections are, we have to kind of, have our good answers in place. But what's really important is the first thing is not showing any nonverbal response to the objection, right? Whether it's a pause,
Right.
you have to think about it. You look at your watch, you laugh, you giggle. So there's a nonverbal component to objections because objections are personal, right? And now, everything was great until now you threw a roadblock up. So I think the first thing is to make sure that you don't have any nonverbal communication. You have to be very comfortable and acknowledge their objection, acknowledge their understanding, acknowledge the fact that they have a question. Listen, Mr. and Mrs. Klein, I understand that you might, think or believe that my, commission, is above whatever, but, what I'd like to do is if I could maybe reinforce or give you again another kind of narrative on the reason why that's the case. I can appreciate your concern with that. Give them the respect that they have an objection, acknowledge it, right? And I think that's very, very important. And I think the tone of your voice needs to have confidence to it. Let's not confuse it with arrogance.
Right.
And the worst is defensive. I can tell you in the real estate and banking arena, when a lot of people, they get defensive. Someone questions their commission, they get defensive. Well, what do you mean? I don't understand. They use old phrases like, you get what you pay for. You ever heard that one?
Oh my!
To me, when I hear that, I literally, my head wants to explode.
Yeah.
Because how many times in life do we not get what we paid for?
Right.
All the time, right?
Right.
All the time. So when you get what you pay for. No, that's not true. Sometimes you do,
right,
but not always. And you never know if you got what you paid for until when? At the end.
Yeah.
How do I know? How do I know? I'm agreeing to your commission today. 4 months later, I don't know what it's going to be like. So we want to stay away from these old catchphrases.
Yeah.
You get what you pay for. Or how about this one? Well, my experience, based on my experience. Well, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of realtors and bankers that have been doing this for 25 years that are terrible. Like, experience. I mean, listen, I just had an experience with a doctor. Doctor's been a doctor for 24 years. He made a mistake.
Right.
I don't know. So you got to be very, very specific. Acknowledge the objection. Right. Don't deflect it or use kooky answers or old phrases. Circle back and digest it well. And make your best argument. Remember, you may not win in that argument. They might still hold firm with not wanting to do it. But and I always say, as long as you leave the customer knowing that you gave it your best, you don't have any regrets on the way out the door. I should have said this. I should have said that. I should have said that. As long as you feel you gave it your best effort and you did it right, and you didn't leave anything on the table, I think that's what it's all about. And now you just have to have the frequency of doing it all the time, right? And that's the way in which I think objections, there's I don't want to name who they are, but I watch some of these real estate guys on social media, and they have all these ways in which to handle customer objections. Like a customer will say, well, I don't agree to your commission, and here's what these guys will say. They say, well, I tell the customer, listen, if your realtor can't negotiate their commission, then do you really want them negotiate? I mean, the arrogance, and again, I don't even know if these guys are real or not, but you hear these things and
if I cave on the commission, I'm gonna cave on the price of your house.
I mean, what a horrible answer.
Oh, awful.
Because that's almost saying to the homeowner, well, if I cave on commission, that means that you're stronger than me, and I need to be strong. I'm not going to cave because I need to prove to you that you're not as strong as me.
You got to know how to make it a team. My friend Anthony does a great thing. He finds all of these situations that come up, and then he creates case studies with existing clients. So if you're a person that has, you want to buy 20 apartments and you want to stick with the mortgage banker that you had before, I'm going to have a case study of somebody who did multiple dwellings with me and why my service was good. And I'm going to say, I understand that you want to stick with the person that you've had before, and that makes sense. I had another client, Scott, who was in the same situation. Let me tell you how that came out, and then go through what happened for Scott. So he finds, it's kind of like that old sales thing, feel, felt, found. I understand how you feel. I had other customers who felt that way, but what we found was it's that kind of thing. But he has actual case studies to mirror the situation that somebody may object to. And it makes
one of the things that I do, and I advise my clients to do it as well, is, testimonials are really important. And so, like, when someone raises an objection, they go, well, I'd say, listen, one of the things, if you would like, Mr. Gorman, here's a list of all of my past clients. And by the way, they all had the same objection you had. They all brought that up. And, if you would like, here's their name, here's their cell phone numbers. Please feel free, give them a call, ask them, there's nothing strong. So what I do, and you'll laugh at this one. So when I get, when I have, opportunities to sell my services to a company, and I'm a higher ticket item, and I will often hear a client say to me, they'll say, Scott, I hear your fee, you're at the highest end of the fee spectrum here. I mean, that's really way above where any other person we're interviewing is at. And one of the things I always say is well, I'm happy to give you some references, and they'll say, okay, who are they? I go, I'm not going to tell you. They go, what? All I want you to do, Mr. and Mrs. Prospect, is start calling around. Just start dialing, call whoever, start calling other real estate companies, start calling banks. If I give you the name, I know what they're going to say. Call around, and I'm sure you're going to get, and they'll be like, what do you mean? Because if I tell you to call, and I will give them the option to do that.
Sure.
You know how many out of 10 do it? Very few actually do it, because you have to have such confidence. Mm-hmm. And by the way, it's true. Like, you can't say it. Like, no. If a real estate company says to me, Scott, who should we call? And I go, just start calling your competitors. Just call. You'll land on someone very quickly that's hired me, and they'll give you what they felt about my investment. And like that, but you have to have the confidence that that's the reaction that you're going to get.
Yeah, for real. So, Scott, if I were brand new in the business, what are 2 or 3 things that you would advise me to focus on to get good? Because what you do, a lot of what you do, like I said, is in your bones. You have processes, but what advice can you give somebody?
So the first thing I would do if I was a new person, let's say in the real estate space, is the ink would not even be dry on your license, and you should start picking communities and go out every Saturday and Sunday and in the early evening, now that it's lighter, and just start introducing yourself to people. Walk up to total strangers and get comfortable engaging in these conversations. The other goal I would tell a new person is that you will be on your road to success if you get screamed at, yelled at, and maybe the police called on you at least once a day. And go out there and start getting comfortable speaking to total strangers. The second day of your license, I would start educating yourself on the business. Well, because the mistake new people make is they don't want to go out there and look stupid. They don't want to go out there without the information. I want to learn. I want to know. I want to know what to say. Learn to speak without knowing what to say. And learn to get comfortable with quasi-embarrassing yourself. And, people are very forgiving. That's the funny thing about the business, is that people get it. And if you were to walk out there as a new person, say, hi, my name is Scott. I've had my license for about 34 seconds. I just wanted to introduce myself to you. I'm really just out there meeting individuals, just saying hello. I don't really, I'm just here as a resource. And by the way, I, love that maple tree in your drive. Just meet people. Spend the first 3 months of your business getting completely comfortable. And then on parallel to that 3 months, start learning the business. Learn what to say to a FSBO. Learn what to say to an expired. Learn what to say to a short sale. Learn what to say to a landlord. Learn what to say to homeowners. Learn parallel to going out there. And people say, well, I don't want to look stupid. I don't want to look stupid. If you don't want to look stupid, you need to quit sales, because that's what we do. We look stupid. And by the way, nobody could really look, you can look ugly, but I don't think you could look at anybody and know if they're stupid or not. I know some really ugly people that are incredibly smart. So no one can look stupid. You got to be stupid.
That's cool.
Got to be stupid. You could be stupid, but you can't look stupid, right? And so that's, to me, what a new person should be doing.
Yeah.
And by the way, the other thing too, Frank, is it will purge out. One of the other things about being a salesperson, even a banker, that if you do this for a week and at the end of the week you're traumatized, this might not be the right business for you. Just because you have a license doesn't mean it's a good business. So if you're traumatized at the end of 10 days, you know what? It wasn't for you. You get credit for trying, but, go work at Walmart.
It's not for everyone, and I think that's the biggest thing. So what you're saying is getting comfortable with people is the number one most important thing. And it's funny you talk about people being forgiving. There's a guy out at University of Chicago, Nick Epley, who does he's a professor of social science. He does some great work, and one of the things that he does is he has people, fill out a survey. Hey, if you got on the train this morning, do you want to talk to somebody? And it's 10 out of 10 no. And people that are on the train, if somebody sat next to you and they try to strike up a conversation, do you want to talk to them? It's a 10 out of 10 no. And then he has people get on the train and start a conversation intentionally. And each of those debriefs at the end are happier. They're on a scale of 1 to 10, they're like a 9. They were glad that someone spoke to them. So what's interesting about people is we believe that no one wants to be interrupted. We believe no one wants to be spoken to. And our belief governs our reticence to approach. But at the same time, the science says, like you said, people are forgiving. They're happy to hear from you.
But listen, one of the things I do, which makes me I think somewhat unique and maybe partly crazy, is I like to go door knocking with my clients. I take them out into the streets, and you probably see on my social media I go do this.
Yeah.
And most of them think that when we knock on a door, we're going to get 10 out of 10 people are going to be mean and nasty.
Right.
You know what? I've been doing this for my whole life. 8 out of 10 people are either nice or neutral.
Yeah.
2 out of 10, nasty.
Right.
It's the opposite. So are you going to let those 2 nasty people stop you from it's the craziest thing. And we go and we do it. And it's a shocking experience for people because they believe it. Like one of the things that when I tell agents to go out there and door knock, they go, well, I don't like when people knock on my door. And I go, well, you need to get into another business. Because if you don't like it, you won't do it.
Right.
Right? So now I live here. I don't mind when people knock on my door. I could care less. I actually respect, again, just not my industry, but I've never been offended when the insect guys knock on my door, when, tree removal service knocks on my door, when the paving, want to do your driveway knock. I'm never offended.
Right.
And I never treat people bad. And but there are some people who are. And, you're right. It's if you believe it, and if you don't like people and you hate it, you can't do it. That's one of my big qualifiers when I take on an individual. If they hate prospecting, I'm the wrong guy for you. I can't teach you how to do something that you hate. You don't like it emotionally. You got to at least not have this prejudicial perspective towards what it is.
And truthfully, if you don't believe it, you're going to bring that to the conversation, and you're not going to come off right because you're expecting rejection. You're going to bring it about.
You actually, yeah, exactly. You're expecting it. Yeah. You're like waiting for it.
For sure. So Scott, as we wrap up, what do you want people to know about you, how to hire you, where to find you?
I'm pretty easy to find. You just kind of put in Scott Einbinder. There's only 2 of them. There's a Hollywood movie producer and myself. So either way, you'll land if you get something there. I'm pretty easy to find. Again, if you are if you're you own a real estate company and you've got agents and this is what it is. And most of your agents are, kind of still devastated with this change of policy in the industry, and they don't know really how to get listings, and you're not sure. Reach out to me, and I've got a lot of options on how you can engage your agents in really kind of going out there and developing very different prospecting approaches in a very unique and different way. It's not the same old scripts. It's not knocking on doors and asking people, do you know anybody who wants to buy or sell? It's not, I have a buyer. It's very, very different approaches. So, listings in the real estate business, that is it. Listings were always important, Frank. But over the past year, they've gone from important to critical. And the buyer agency world is changing. There's a lot of turmoil in that space in terms of where commissions are going to ultimately land, but we all know that story. But the bottom line is it's about listings. And if you're in the mortgage business and you're a banker and you run or own a mortgage company or whatnot, the realtor, love them or hate them, they still play a big role in that process with referrals. So if you're using all those old methods of developing realtor relationships, helping them through education in a very different way. I actually teach loan officers how to prospect for listings. And imagine you're a loan officer and you want to do business with a realtor. And Frank, you were a realtor, and I said to you, Frank, listen, you've been selling real estate for 27 years. Do you know any mortgage people? And you go like, yeah, I know about 30 or 40 of them. And I said to you, Frank, if I could help you with your listings, if I can help bring you listings and do things with you in the field, would that be an opportunity for us to maybe, develop a foundation to exchange opportunity? You'd say absolutely, right? Because listings are what it's about. So the loan officers need to change and calibrate. I mean, AI, you talk about AI, that's going to have a big impact in the mortgage business. I mean, unlike houses, every house is different. Mortgages are more of a commodity. What's happening in the AI space with mortgage finance and customers calling up bots, giving their whole situation into a AI platform, and the AI comes back with 18 different recommendations. Now, again, loan officers play an important role in the transaction, but what's your value proposition? If you know Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac guidelines like the back of your hand, do you think AI knows it?
Yeah.
So let's cross that off the back. So knowing product, it's not your value.
Matter.
How do I execute the field? How do I engage? All those things matter. So, and again, if you're a loan officer and you're a realtor base or buyer agents, well, if the complexion of buyer agency changes, who's going to do all the business? Listing agents. So if a loan officer is really in the game, they're building relationships with listing agents, because a lot of these listing agents are going to be controlling both sides of the transaction. So that's what I do.
And I can tell you, I will reiterate again that I have never seen anybody more energized and giving real useful information. I've never seen anybody do it as well as you. So if you're listening to this and you're in that mortgage space, or you're in the real estate space, and you haven't had Scott into your business, I can tell you, you're making a mistake. You need to get on it now.
Thank you so much, Frank.
Thank you. Had a great time. Always good to see you.
You as well. You as well.
Ready to take your sales team or event to the next level? Visit franksomma.com to discover how Frank can coach your top performers, deliver a tailored workshop for your team, or captivate your audience with a content-packed keynote at your next event. Frank's best-selling book, B2B is really P2P, is now available on Amazon and Frank's website. Here's a special offer. As a valued listener, mention this podcast when you contact Frank and receive a 10% discount on your first coaching session, keynote, or workshop booking.
That's a wrap. Thanks so much for tuning into this episode of Selling in the Age of AI. Be sure to check out the show notes for links to all of the topics we discussed, and of course, to connect with our amazing guests. I have to shout out big love to my production team, Neeks, Angelo, Nico of Digital Presence. You guys rock. If you want your digital presence to explode, check these guys out at digitalpresence.team. And until next time, remember, people can't point and click you. Be the difference maker for your prospects and clients.